What's up, guys? This is Courtney, one half of the Rest Deconstruction here, and I have Bruce and John with me.
Yo.
Th- This is where you say hi, Bruce.
Oh.
Can wait? Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Is No, this dude. I bet you he didn't even have on his fucking headphones.
I
Uh oh.
did, but I just didn't hear shit.
Oh, great. Well, I'm keeping this in. Fuck it. Um. So today's episode 24 of the podcast, and we're gonna talk a little bit of news, but I also have a really interesting question that I'm gonna pose to the forum as well, and see how that turns out because this should be an interesting topic. But
Uh,
before we get to that, let's go ahead and talk about some Power Rangers news. There was some news that was announced last week, I believe, about a TV show and related to the reboot movie that they're doing for Power Rangers. John shared it with the group. I think Bruce has it pulled up. Go ahead and read us some of the details, Bruce, so we kind of know what's going on.
all right, so let's see. Hasbro. Wait, what? The fuck, Jonathan Entwistle,
Mm-hmm.
uh, who's the showrunner for the end of the fucking world or whatnot. And I'm not okay with this. Is going to be like the overseer, the director for the movie, as well as overseeing the television production. There's been stories that have been leaking also that Hasbro plans to cut ties with Toei
Mm-hmm.
and not adapt any Sentai and just start doing shit from the beginning, which I don't know how I feel about, but that's, speculation at the point. But it's basically the movies and the TV show are now going to tie in with each other. So I don't know if they're going to be relaunching Mighty Morphin and just going from there, or if it's the movie's going to be a retelling of Mighty Morphin, where the series going forward are just going to be in conjunction with that,
Mm-hmm.
but they will be tied together apparently.
Hmm.
And that's basically it.
Yeah, this is the okay, now this is my first, like we discussed. I hadn't read I didn't read the article when it first got shared. Probably should have, but that sounds really weird because I know the news that we got on the reboot was that it was supposed to be some weird time traveling thing where it would be like I guess the modern team or the modern teens would go back in time to the 90s and run into the team of Mighty Morphin.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so with these details, it makes sense with
Yeah.
the rumors that we've heard of severing ties with Toy and basically just kind of rebooting the entire franchise again. Because at that point, that would be, a launching off point where you have the reboot movie basically go back to 1990, to 1993,
Mm-hmm.
and have the TV show just jump off from that ending point and then restart everything over. Now, my question would be is one, why would you do all of this? And then two, would you basically be following the franchise from the beginning? So from Mighty Morphin, Zeo, Turbo, and shit like that, or is it just they're about to relaunch Mighty Morphin Power Rangers? And I mean, if the rumor is true or becomes true that they're separating ties with the company that provides the actual Sentai footage and costumes and things like that, what does this mean? Like, is it just gonna be, oh, we're just starting everything back over, or what? Because now I'm just kind of confused on what the plans could be now, and I can't say that I can kind of pinpoint an idea of what angle they possibly could be taking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not in favor of the breakup
Mm-hmm.
because in my opinion, I really think that that's kind of one of the biggest factors to their success. It's to me the way I look at it is like if you have a good collaboration, whether it's filmmaker and filmmaker or filmmaker and actor or like any kind of department or whichever, I just see that as soon as a collaboration kind of severs ties, I mean, you can even put it to like when bands break up or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's never any, I mean, maybe somewhere along the line there may be some success, but rarely through the very beginning or at the early stages are you going to get like a huge hit. So I mean, regardless of what route they go, I think if they do break up with Toy, then uh, I don't know. But at that same with that the flip side of that coin is I do see Hasbro kind of being like, we can take it from here kind of thing. Because I think they're also notorious, and I may be mistaken, but I think they're also notorious with that when it comes to the Transformers and their, kind of like the rights to like the toy lines and everything like that. That's the only thing I can kind of chalk that up to. Because of course Transformers was made by like a company I think called Takara or something like that, that was out there in Japan or, but either way, it's like, hey, we took your ideas and we used them, but now we're not going to need you anymore, even though, you know, what you've done is an integral part of the DNA to what we're still doing. That's just my view on it.
I mean, like, I don't like the breakup. Okay, so it was like when Power Rangers and Bandai broke up before Hasbro took completely over. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like, because Bandai Japan makes some badass stuff for Sentai, and Bandai America, they've been lazy when into their that looked like a breakup that needed to happen because they weren't bringing any of the far superior figures and stuff over to the states. It was just, we're going to put in as little effort as possible. So I saw when that happened, I was like, okay, all right, that makes sense. But Power Rangers, literally, its DNA is Sentai. Like
Yeah.
there's like no way around it because it's
Which is my
just,
main confusion.
yeah. So, and like what John was alluding to, like when Hasbro takes over stuff, they take it over. Like the new Transformers and shit is Hasbro production. New GI Joes, those are like Hasbro production and stuff like that. And I haven't watched any of the newer stuff to get any type of feeling for it. I don't think like same thing with Power Rangers. I do the 5 episodes. That's when you have to hook me, like because Dino Fury is Hasbro's first full run in charge. So I want to see how that plays out. But I also watch Real Soldier, and like they've been leaking that they're turning the Green Ranger into a female because they want to have the first female Green Ranger, where the series before that they skipped and the series after have female Green Rangers.
Really?
Yeah, so you're just trying to get that first female, like you literally have 2 instances of female Green Rangers, and you're going to cut ties with like you can wait, and then because I think what was it fucking what's it called Kidder Major, you can kind of play a little bit better than Q Ranger because they got like 13 fucking Rangers on that show, and I don't know what the budget is, but Kira Major, you got your standard 5 with your 6 showing up, and once I don't know how you can adapt it, but you have that. But so like cutting that relationship off also means you can lose some innovative shit. Like
Mm-hmm.
people's like the first female Red Ranger was on SPD, which I don't count because it was American made, whereas I go with the first female Red Ranger being in Samurai or Shinkanger
Yeah.
because full on morph scene and everything. So that's all you had to do was adapt that. It's not just someone showing up. Oh, hey, it's a woman and now she's in suit. Like when you have like that background, a rich background that Sentai has, like you can keep adapting. You can go before, uh, you can like Mighty Morphin and whatnot. There's plenty of teams before, and there's countless teams after that you haven't used. So I think you're losing that fucking history and that breadth of footage that you can use, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
I don't know if I see them going before uh Mighty Morphin and using that footage, because that's some old ass footage.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that I was like, but that's an option if you want to do it. But there's
Yeah,
also plenty of teams that you skipped over. Like,
yeah.
uh, was I think Beast Morpher, like Go Busters from like 2012,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you skip that, and like the series before that was after the series you currently adapted. So you're jumping through some shit. Yeah, Go
Yeah,
Busters
all over the place.
20. So it's like, okay, what a deal where you obviously don't have to adapt every Sentai is now gone because that was the thing, more toy sales if you just keep adapting. And now that's gone because they're skipping teams, merging shit, jumping all over the place. But I don't know. I guess I'll watch the first 5 episodes of Dino Fury to see what their first full and control series will look like before I make any like final judgments. But just as a cursory judgment, I don't think this is a good idea.
Yeah. Agreed.
So my question would be then, is Dino Fury is obviously still adapted from a Sentai
Mm-hmm.
series. Um because I haven't watched shit regarding Dino Fury. I know they've announced cast.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they have any footage yet, do they?
I don't think they've just been given a go ahead to film in New Zealand. So they announced the three like basically what's one of the things with teams like this because I watch Rear Soldier. It starts off with like the three main and then two join later, which is why they only announced three the first three like cast
Uh-huh.
members, and then like I think about third or fourth episode, Black and Green show up. But
Okay.
I'm constantly saying, that's one of the things I'm constantly saying. Like, there's like, hey, this chick is going to be the Green Ranger. And I'm like, what? But they've only all they've shown is Sentai footage. Like
Okay.
you can tell because the Red Ranger is played by a high yellow black dude, but when they show him morphing, his hands really really light.
Hmm. That's funny. So my thing following up then is, if they're planning on actually going full autonomous with their creation, with the creative side of the series,
Mhm.
and they do break up with Toy, what does, because I think the rumors regarding the movies, like the plot synopsis for the movies, wasn't confirmed. It was just kind of rumored.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if so, this would probably indicate that plot synopsis is true. And like, how obviously this is just a rumor about them breaking up, but we're talking about the news regarding a TV show and a reboot movie. So, what do you guys think? Whether or not whether or not it relates to the possible breakup with Toy. What do you guys? How do you guys feel about the reboot movie having a tie-in TV show that may or may not be like a reboot of the whole franchise, or may just, continue in the movie universe? Because basically, the way that I'm looking at it now is that, well, they're going to be doing a TV, they're going to be doing their own little universe, Power Rangers universe, and they're going to have a movie and a tie-in TV show. Are they going to, again, like I was saying earlier, is this going to be like their own kind of thing where they just go back and forth between, hey, we're starting with the movie, we're going to do a TV show, and then we're only going to do a TV show, or is it going to be movie, TV show up until we change uniforms or teams, and then another movie, and keep flowing into the TV show? Like, what do you guys think about the idea of the reboot movie having its own TV show, or a
I
tie-in TV show rather?
I don't think it's a good idea unless they're gonna stick with one type of kind of style to it. So what they tried to do with the last Power Rangers movie was they tried to really kind of make it universal. So I mean, of course, you know, in the style that most of these superhero and sci-fi fantasy movies are made, where it attracts everybody. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing, is if you're going to make a TV show that's going to be connected to this, and like that's the thing is I guess we don't know what order, that is going to be in, but like let's say for example you're going to kickstart the series with a movie, then at some point it's like, okay, is this going to be like a Nickelodeon like children's movie on like, or a children's TV show on like on the kids block, or is it going to be something to where this is something that's going to appeal to the masses, and it's like, hey, yeah, we're going to have this show on 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock on Nickelodeon, or whoever owns, whichever channel they're showing, which I'm sure it's Nickelodeon, right? Like,
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
think.
think
yeah,
still airs on it.
yeah. So like I mean, that's just that's just my take. If you're gonna make it a kids show, then you have to coincide that with the movie. So your movie has to be essentially like super kid friendly if they're going to be in the same like style and universe. So that's where it kind of gets me to where like that doesn't seem like the best idea, but you know. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's happened before with the Turbo movie, and no one saw the Turbo movie. So it was canon. They had the fucking recap at the beginning of the season. Like the first, I think it was like a three-parter, was explaining all the stuff that happened in the movie because once again, no one went to see it. That movie tanked hard. Whereas you're kind of like, if you're going to time in, you're seriously depending on the marketability of Power Rangers because, as we know, newer Power Ranger series do not get the same love as Mighty Morphin. It's
Yeah.
just
Right.
not a thing. And your audience is your already built-in fan base. So you have to appeal to the built-in fan base, which will go see the movie, but as we saw with the 2017, it's not enough to get it. Like it made, what was it, like 45 million over its budget. And that was just its actual budget, not, marketing and all of that stuff. So there's no way to especially with how COVID is affecting, movie market. You can't just sit there and think, well, this is still going to be the same, so we can do the movie, then we can tie the TV series in, because it sounded like they're going to be symbiotic.
Yeah.
Whereas,
Mm-hmm.
but how are you going to do that? Like you're filming and then like, up season finale, go see the movie to get the stuff because we're not go. So once again, you're counting on the market that watched the show to also be the people's like, oh, I remember Power Rangers. Let me just go see this and get confused. It's like, this isn't like anything that I know.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Like, I need more details than what they have
It's just
Yeah.
really,
because.
yeah, it's just really, really tricky to do. I mean, it'd be one thing, honestly, if it was me, because you just brought up the Turbo movie, which is a really valid point. If it was me, the more cost effective go about things is like, look, let's put out this TV show. And if this TV show is one that kind of catches fire, because that's never been done before. Like,
Mm,
as far as, it's kind of like, okay, you guys tried rebooting the first Mighty Morphin, and that
mm,
didn't work out. So instead of rebooting a whole other movie, and then like if that movie tanks, your show is tanked, which is what happened for Turbo, like Bruce was saying, the game plan should be like, well, look, why don't we do the first ever TV show that reboots Mighty Morphin, and let's
mm,
kind of test the waters real quick, see if this catches on, because obviously, like Bruce was saying, anything that you slap the Mighty Morphin, version on, people are going to be interested, like they're going to go see it, just based out of nostalgic purposes, already. So
Yeah.
if you were to do that first, like, hey, yeah, we're going to make a Nick show, but this is going to be, we're going to redo the Power Rangers, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and we're going to do it in our own way since they're not, with Toei anymore, then chance it there. That way it's like, if it works out and if people do catch on, and the tide starts to really, like, move forward, then it's like, okay, then they're slowly putting themselves in, back in the pop culture, like, hat. And it's like, okay, look, y'all enjoy that, well, boom, we're about to give you a movie, and the movie is going to be in canon with the TV show.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's, because even then, like, when you look about it, when we think about it, Power Rangers even back then was doing some stuff that was kind of never been done before, because even though they had a movie where it was kind of like I guess you could call it canon, but it wasn't really, because it's different suits and armored versions, and then they use, but they did end up using, the Thunder Zords or the Ninja Zords, and they did end up having the Ninjetti power.
Yeah.
So I mean, they just did their own kind of like version of it. So it was like, okay, damn, y'all love the movie, so let's give them that in the show. Now, of course, it was a little different because they didn't upgrade the suits. They did the shiny, glittery ones. Like,
Oh, Jesus fucking Christ.
oh my god, like,
Metallic armor's trash.
I mean, yeah, that was the cue the SpongeBob meme. Like, I'm out. Like, like that did it for me. But
Like, also, back to the whole splitting up a toy. I think they're in it the wrong relationship. They really need to end this relationship with Nick. Like, it has not been helping. Like, 20 episodes done, and then, like, okay, you don't even. You, I think the shortest series is, I think, Mystic Force, and they had like 36 or some shit like that. Like, you don't also really need like a full 40 to 50 episodes to do a series, but splitting it into 20 and then it's like, all right, watch season 2 is not Power Rangers strong point. It's
Yeah.
and out, because then you got to sit there and think about, like, am I going to keep watching? Because if you go straight through, like, I've watched some terrible seasons straight through, and then after I was done, I was like, okay, that was awful. But if he was like, all right, split it, season 2 is coming back, I'm like, I'm not coming back for this. Like,
Right.
Power Rangers should not be digested and go, okay, now that I thought about it, let's see what they're bringing for season 2, because the super seasons were always terrible.
Mm-hmm.
They
here
could
we
not
go
keep,
again.
but they could not keep the plot going into season 2, which, like, even with, was it Dino Chargers, it was a solid season. They did a lot of development, but then when Dino Supercharge came around, it was like, no, you okay? No, it's not what? No, it's not. This isn't it. So
Yeah.
trying to separate it like that does not bode well for the series. So I think if we, like, just get rid of the Nick deal. Like, that was something that you guys inherited. You don't have to keep it.
Yeah.
Uh,
I don't worry about it. Keep going.
Well,
oh no, that was it.
well, my question, my counter question to that is like, who who would you have the license with, or who would you say, like, you know would get that master license to be able to put, you know them on TV? Because it's like who would you put in charge? Because
Who
I
Like,
would
mean,
you? Who? What network would you sign with
yeah,
to
well,
air the
yeah,
show?
because I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that. I was talking to my brother-in-law, and we're like, I'm just realizing here now, like, he let me borrow a bunch of IDW Turtle comics, like some
Mm-hmm.
volumes, and I noticed, I was like, yeah, Nickelodeon owns the Turtles, and then, like, now talking about it now, I'm like, oh shit, Nickelodeon owns the Power Rangers. So it's like, that the fuck, like, who else could, so who else would get the rights, or who else would want to touch that property to the point where it's like, you know, yeah, we're gonna invest, you know, we're gonna do the right thing. Like, that's, I guess that's my counter
Well,
question.
Well, I mean, real quickly to your point earlier regarding the movie and the TV show, I think it would be interesting if they did do a whole TV show where it's like, hey, we're rebooting Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Um, and then it's gonna have, if this does well, hey, remember that movie that you have been hearing about? Well, this ties in with that.
It's getting greenlit.
Um,
Yeah.
but I think it would be a little bit weird because we're hearing the details that since we're just now hearing about the TV show and the possible details we've already heard about the movie. I think the movie would have to come in the movie would have to come first unless the rebooted unless the TV series is whatever team that they have ends up like the villain of the season or whatever like that ends up causing them or forcing them to have to go back in time and running into the old Rangers like that original team.
Hmm.
Um, so it's gonna be weird depending on which comes first because of the details that we've heard. If it's the a team of Power Rangers running into the 1993 squad, then it's like, well, yeah, you can end the season like that, but it will be really tricky on how to like branch that off, especially depending on how the movie is done. If the movie comes first, you got to do all that building of characters in the film first, and then they run into the 1993 squad, and then the TV show just takes place after that. Or you can do all your character building of the team that goes back in time, and then just get it out the way, so you can just jump straight in to the story of the movie of them. Oh, we have to fight big bad of the season. Oh
Mhm.
shit, we need to go back and he's going back in time and trying to change the timeline. We need to follow him, and then they wind up in 93 or whatever like that. More to the point about the TV networks. I think I agree where it shouldn't be broken up into two seasons. You should just do one long season.
Mhm.
Um, if it doesn't have to be 40 episodes, if they keep doing, 22 episode seasons, it doesn't necessarily have to be 40 episodes. It can be, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. You can get away with doing like a 36 episode or, whatever like that season. But breaking it up doesn't need to continuously happen because it just doesn't work. Um, and I get, giving them breaks in between, like season breaks, or in season breaks between filming and shit like that.
Mhm.
Um, but you don't have to do season one and season two. I mean, hell, even Mighty Morphin, first season of Mighty Morphin had 60 episodes. Second season had, I think, 56, and then
Mhm.
the third season had like 50. You know what I'm saying? So, but the thing with Mighty Morphin is that they literally the same kept the same suits for the first 2 years. They brought in the White Ranger and they still kept the same suits. They just had footage from the Sentai series that the White Ranger was on, and they changed the Zords. That was it. What's to stop? I get that people say, "Hey, this is a way for them to still, get toy sales." They can still do that with bringing in if they pace it correctly, and they bring in certain special upgrades to the Zords or side Zords or side armor or something, power ups and shit like that. You know what
Mhm.
I'm saying? They can still do that over like a 40 episode season if they pace it well enough. As far as the network, I think it would have to be if you continue with Nick, you have to renegotiate and say, hey, we're not doing two seasons, two season series anymore. because I think that's one of the things that have kept them why they're so far behind on adaptations, because they adapt Go Buster, 2 seasons of Go Buster, or let's take it back. Go, like Bruce said, Go Buster's from 2012. I remember people talking about Go Buster being adapted at PMC3. Um, let's go back to like Samurai. They have 2 seasons of Samurai. When if you would have done just one longer season, you probably be a little bit closer to down there doing a 1-for-1 adaptation
Mm-hmm.
of the Sentai series. You know what I'm saying? So if they stay with Nick, they have to renegotiate the season order. It has to be, hey, we're not doing 2 seasons of 22 episodes because that's not really working all that well. We're gonna do 1 season of 36, 1 season of 32, something like that. If not, then it has to be a network where it has to be a network that you can get away with doing something like that, yet you have a little bit more possible freedom when it comes to the themes and that you're gonna try to create with the adaptation. So I would say something if you want to keep it on cable, your guess is as good as mine. I don't have cable. I don't know any of the cable networks that air TV shows besides like HBO and AMC. Um, if you want to do it on like broadcast TV, then I mean you got options. You got NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox, um, CW. You have options. I
Mm-hmm.
think especially depending on when you want to air it. Because I mean, shit, what time does Power Rangers come on now?
I think it's like 7 in the morning.
Okay,
But
so Power Rangers is still an early morning show. So you have and the other thing with this is that it probably has to stay with Nick because there's no children's TV block on broadcast TV.
nope.
The last fucking children's programming block was in like 2010, I believe. Because I remember looking it up a few years ago, and I was looking at one of the old shows from Kids WB, or hell, it might have even been when Vortex on CW was re-airing Lost Galaxy, and I was looking it up, and I realized the whatever source that I came across, it might have been a Wikipedia page. It was like, hey, there's no more. This is the last instance of children's a block of children's programming on broadcast on network TV. So if you plan on airing it super early still, then it might just have to stay with Nick. If not, you have to pick. You can either do streaming
Mm-hmm.
or you have to go with a network that's gonna at least have gonna be able to at least bring in that audience for
Yeah.
that early morning show. Obviously, Nick is all children's programming. It's a children's channel. Um, but I will probably lean more towards streaming if anything else because you would be able to get away with a lot of stuff. Although you probably wouldn't be able to do the super long seasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it comes to like trying to figure out a proper network, they might just have to stay with Nick because it's a kids show. It airs early in the morning. I can't think of any other network that does something like that.
Yeah, okay, so I'm looking at it because I'm trying to break down like how Beast Morphers is airing because from season 1 to season 2, I'm like constantly seeing, hey, like Power Rangers Twitter, Power Rangers Instagram, like Beast Morphers is coming back, so on and so forth. I'm like, haven't you been talking about this for like forever? Like season 2's on its way.
Hmm.
So season 2, episode 1 was February 22nd, and then they went on hiatus April 25th. So they did 5 episodes, give or take. And then, no, they did about 5 to 7 episodes, then went on break, and then came back on September 19th. So
Okay.
I don't see a problem with you doing that, but like the first episode was the Evox Snare. So it aired September 19th, 2020 in the US, June 11th, 2020 in the UK. So it's not stopping in the UK. It's still airing.
Hmm.
So if you're trying to like, okay, so like with the was it Great Connection, I've watched this already, and it just like the big episode just happened yesterday, but I've watched it already because it was still airing in the UK. So they just threw it online. It's like, here you go. So if I'm not into the show and you're airing it like that, I don't have to wait for you. So that's also losing you viewers. So
Yeah.
like Power Rangers, Mighty Morphin did take like breaks, you know,
Hmm.
because they'll air something and then there wouldn't be a next time on Power Rangers. Then I go to watch it and it's an episode I've seen already. So
Yeah.
they did not air like 65 episodes straight. They took breaks, which I had no problem with. But then again, it was like my only source. I didn't have the internet, but I assumed that that was universal. So you build yourself an audience. Your audience will wait. You can air, okay, let's say you air 40 episodes back to back. You can take 2 or 3 breaks in between them and then keep it going. Like Disney did it, like uh, when like every Power Ranger series up until when they joined Nick have taken breaks
Yeah.
because it's like they don't. Oh, hey, it's a rerun. Okay, I remember this. Okay, I'll rewatch this episode, so on and so forth. That's like how I've done it. You can take breaks and still retain your audience, but to split it up like it is, like a fucking giant ass break while shit's still airing in the UK is not helping. So, hey, let's take a 2 week break and then come back. Okay, let's take a 4 month break and come back. Doesn't hold like the same weight because I'm
Yeah.
gonna lose interest, like especially with the way people watch TV today, where it's not everyone has cable, or you can wait for it. Like most people are just waiting for Power Rangers to upload on Netflix, and then they just
Hmm.
watch all that shit through. Because once again, Power Rangers isn't one of them series. Like as we found out last week, isn't one of them series that you can just keep going. Just like, okay, yeah, this is going.
And you're breaking up.
Ah, okay, is that better?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, so like you start as like you give it time to dissect the series, you're going to realize that it's not something that you can be watching, even if it's for nostalgic purposes. You're losing your audience with the way you're airing shit now because your other affiliates across the world aren't holding it to a Nickelodeon contract.
Hmm.
So I just think that's just like not a good way to air shit.
Yeah, again, I don't have the answer when it comes to what network to choose. It's a really
Yeah,
good question to ask though, because it makes you think about the presentation of Power Rangers and what they actually, when they air,
yeah,
what's the goal with the TV with their TV show, shit like that. So I think it's actually a really interesting question to ask. Well, not Nick who, you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Um,
Well, I mean, and I mean, I while Bruce was talking, I'm like sitting here in my head, like wondering, like, damn, really, like, who else would be able to take on the license or willingly want to like buy it? Because then I just even saw like the details between the purchase that Nickelodeon did for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and like I had to like look at several like news sources to even see it.
mm,
Because they Nickelodeon bought it from Eastman and Laird for 60 million. 60,
mm-hmm.
60 million? That's fucking chump change. for like as much money as that. I mean, granted, they've probably made a lot of money for holding out, but like, man, 60 million,
Yeah.
like that's not even a quarter of like a weekend's worth of box office for one of the Marvel movies. Like that ain't money. Like that's
Yeah.
so like. But again, I guess the thing is I had to go back and think. Well, this is 2009. This was before the the 2012 Nickelodeon TMNT show, the one that came out like, kind of put him back on the map.
Mm-hmm.
And then this was also, like I said, I've been talking Turtles with my brother-in-law, and they're kind of the same thing. The franchises are very, very alike. They're huge, popular, you know, nostalgic franchises that kind of, almost faded with the time. And, the only people that were still on it were like legit core fans. So I
Mm-hmm.
guess like, the thing with me is like, I mean, Nickelodeon can keep it, but when y'all mentioned streaming, I was like, man, that's brilliant, because nowadays everybody is streaming. Like that's the way to go. Nobody has time for that. Like I said, nobody who's like an adult now who watched Power Rangers as a kid and for some reason is still a fan, or for any reason is still a fan, I guess. Sorry. They're not gonna have the type of time to be like, oh man, I need to get that 3 o'clock block, I need to take that lunch break to
Mm-hmm.
make it back home. So I mean, now everything is streaming, so it makes more sense to do that, because I mean, just looking at it, 9 out of 10 of the hottest shows, anything that's not in the movies, they're streaming, like, Stranger Things, and, your, I mean, there's probably several that I'm like, I can't even think of right now because my mind is like solely on Power Rangers. But if you did
Yeah.
something, well, I mean, shit, take for example the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like Netflix series, or like The Mandalorian. You put out one episode, every week, or if you just let that whole shit just stream, let 21 episodes just go, you've got your season right there, and that's the thing, is people are going to hype it up, people are going to go crazy about it, and if it's actually legitimately good, people are going to be clamoring for the very next season. And at that point, shit, you wouldn't even have to do a movie. You could just be like, nah, man, we're going to put all our money into the Netflix series or the Hulu series, or, you know, I'm surprised Nickelodeon doesn't have a streaming service yet. Like, everybody's got a streaming service now.
Yeah.
I think, like I said, the only reason why I brought up streaming is because it's a good option to let you kind of get away with doing more. Now I don't know what that would mean as far as like this is going based on if they didn't break up with Toy, so they had footage to use and everything like that. You might be able to get away with using a little bit more footage or adapting it a different way, but that's also a good option. But like I said, I think the one major drawback from streaming is that I can't see they would probably have to stick to like the 20 episode season and make it a really tight, really well put together season. Make sure that they get everything that they want to do done,
Mm-hmm.
because I can't see a 32 episode season surviving on a streaming platform.
No. But so I'm on Netflix right now, and I'm looking at the first thing it shows me in trendy now is Mystic Force. So
Hmm.
there's a market for it. Like I can sit down and watch, once again, just throwing background stuff. But also with Netflix, like with their original series, there's like a 2 year gap in between seasons, but they still pick right back up and people will watch them. I'm not saying you
Yeah.
can do that with Power Rangers. I'm just saying there's like people will expect, hey, okay, it's an original. They can take their time with it. You can hammer out what you want your plot to be, so there it doesn't feel like, hey, here's the cast, rush them off to New Zealand, and based on our conversations with Paul, like all the episodes, I don't know if this is still the thing. We can ask him next time we talk to him, since he was like on the more recent series, is they're
Yeah.
shooting multiple episodes at the same time.
Yeah.
So is that like, so the writing teams is like, they got their directors and they're like, here you go. because you know you got to mass produce it quickly, which is why there's no continuity. Is that still going on? Could you slow it
Right.
down a little bit? You know, are you as part of your contract that you have to get shit done in a certain amount of time?
Right.
So like, there's questions about the series that need answered before I can definitively say this is who it should go to. Because I mean, I don't think Power Rangers will survive on streaming unless it's a platform specific, like if Hasbro, because Hasbro's got a lot of properties they can do their own streaming stuff on.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that too.
So like it'll have to be Hasbro, and like you can supplement your live action shit with like your Power Rangers by throwing in like we also got this older stuff that you can watch too while we're getting this prep.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah. No. Yeah. No. Like I said, Hasbro streaming service is something that I was thinking about too, bringing up because they do have a lot of properties that they own that they could just add to the service and be like, hey, this is what we're doing. Check all this other stuff out, but know that we're gonna be putting the rebooted TV show on here as well.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean that could very well be an option too. That ultimately is the one that's done. Where it's like, hey, we're doing a 30 episode run of Power Rangers of our new Power Ranger series. Is it going to be premiering on, the Hasbro Video or whatever the streaming service they want to name. Um, and so they could that might allow them to maybe crank more of a budget into it, put more money into it, or who knows. But I definitely think this was an interest. Now knowing the details about the announcement of the TV show and the reboot series, or the reboot movie and the TV show, this is just interesting stuff to think about because the future of Power Rangers is probably going to change as we know it. So what does that mean for retro fans? What does that mean for a bunch of other avenues in the fandom? You know what I'm saying? Because Power Rangers might blow up again, and might not. Who knows? But
Well,
it's
I mean,
definitely gonna.
yeah. I think it's always, at the end of the day, it's always going to be there. I mean, like that's one of the reasons that Hasbro put, and like I said, I haven't even looked it up yet, but that's one of the reasons they purchased, the license along with Nickelodeon. Is, you know, they know that that stuff sells, and that's
Yeah,
even with as crappy as a job, um, as Bandai may or may not have doing. I mean, that's a matter of opinion. I thought they were mediocre. I mean, I honestly thought that when it came to merchandising and the legacy stuff that they were putting out, like as far as like props, I thought that those are some of the best prop replicas, and if anything, like that they were doing that first before Hasbro was putting out like their prop replicas on like Marvel characters. So like,
yeah,
and that's because Bandai saw the potential, because they saw that there's tons of people that are just putting in money into customizing, and like I can't even name names, but I mean there's tons of people who have like the molds like to the old like television shows, helmets and weapons and stuff, and they were making them. So I mean, of course, from a business perspective, Bandai America was like, man, we got the rights to all this shit. How come we're not doing it? And
right.
then they started doing, re-releasing that, that 6 inch or 6.5 inch, line from the legacy that people were freaking out about. Damn, I mean, it feels like yesterday, but it was 4 years ago. Um, but it wasn't even perfect. But that's the thing is Hasbro, definitely the masters at selling toys. Like there's nobody better right now than
Yeah,
Hasbro. And like I'm saying, even then, with some of the stuff that they've been doing as far as re-releasing a lot of the characters and trying to push out new characters, I mean the new stuff that they're putting out, it's we're in a different league right now, because I mean we've been waiting how long for like evil space alien creatures, and
Mhm.
they're giving it to us, and they're giving us good ones. Like Like
Pumpkin
that.
rapper.
Oh man, and like, but not. I mean, and even that, like, but just to give the additional heads that you can swap with the Rangers,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that's and see, but what that is like that's the guy who made that or the guy who threw that idea like in that marketing room or in that boardroom meeting or wherever. He grew up watching the shit. Like he knew it. He was, but that was just, the technology wasn't there for the toys, but he knew, man, it would be so cool if you could swap heads with the pumpkins while they're facing pumpkin rap. Like, man, that's
Yeah.
ingenious. Like that's some clever shit right there. But talking about the expectations and like the possibilities, I'm like, they do have the possibility to just branch out and like even crossover. And like I always go back. I know a lot of times we've talked, whenever we talk Power Rangers, but those Boom comics, man. I mean, that's core stuff right there. That's been doing really, really good. And if history has shown us anything, it's like, man, if it worked in the comics, it can work, in the TV or movie medium.
Yeah.
Like it will. Like it can. But that's the thing is y'all just don't have the right people, or y'all have other people in those boardrooms or other people in those, idea rooms that aren't the core creators. Like man, whoever, like I think his name's Kyle Higgins, like the guy who basically started, writing the Power Rangers and
Yeah.
Yeah.
putting them back in, like a modern, like the dude put the actual characters from the 90s and brought them into modern times. And it's
Yeah.
like what he's doing is brilliant. And he didn't change it. I mean, the only thing he changed was probably the technology. Like, yes, now they're high school kids with cell phones, but they've still got their communicators
Which
but
is
they're
just
still the
weird.
same kids. Like they're the same kids, like even the way that they're drawn. So I mean, I don't know. It's just like, is this one of those times whenever I'm reading those comics and I'm going in, I'm like, dude, why can't they just take, like, this is like the blueprint right here. Like, how come no one's just throwing that on the table and be like, yo, if y'all just did that in a live action form, you'd have gold.
I would,
Like,
I wouldn't even. This has been tossed around before, but I think they should go animated. It
Yeah.
would,
I mean, that too, that I would definitely welcome that.
because I think it allows for them to do a lot more stuff. I know it would be a change. It would be something different than what we're used to. We're always used to seeing live action Power Rangers,
Yeah,
but I think animation gives more room to just do whatever. You can
yeah,
still do a straight up adaptation of a particular series, but now you don't have to worry about getting actors to New Zealand. You don't have to worry about um, the season length because you can do a 26 episode season of a cartoon and it'll be fine. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Because that's the expectation. When you can go to Disney Plus and pull up Iron Man, Avengers Earth Mightiest Heroes, uh Fantastic Four, X-Men. I can guarantee you every one of those seasons have at least 20 episodes. Every one of those first seasons has at least 20 episodes. That's the norm when it comes that was the norm when it came to kids animation. So I think you could crank out you can have an animated season, an animated series of Power Rangers and have it be 22, 24 episodes and still get the same amount of story across that you would as they did back then with the 50 episode seasons. I think at least.
Well, I will agree.
What'd you say?
I will agree. Like I think one of the things that should have been in this announcement is animated.
Yeah.
So because once again, you can do a Mighty Morphin animated. You can bring back originals to do voice. Like there is no aging. Like you can just do a straight Mighty Morphin uh, cartoon and have that go for as long as you want, and
Yeah.
no one will bat an eye. You can. You know what? I think we should move on to Zeo, and then you can just like keep it going, something like that. Hell, you can air
Yeah.
them all at the same time.
I mean, at this point, one of the things that they're doing is, they're all in the same continuity, and that's the thing is like you're able to change shit up. So like you don't have to make Jason, or I'm sorry, Tommy, eventually go from you know Dragon Ranger to Red Zeo Ranger. Like you could have other people, like you could mix up the continuity to where like he bestows the Zeo crystals to somebody else, or like in an alternate universe, because I mean that's another thing that everybody's doing now. The DC multiverse is going on, the Marvel
Yeah.
multiverse with Doctor Strange. Like you could have it to where like the same way that they did a parallel universe for Tommy, you know you could do that animated. And I mean that's probably gonna that would probably be one of the most successful things for you, because Jason David Frank could come back and voice, of course, is because he's going to, or he wants to, you know because
Yeah.
that's what's gonna happen. um but on the flip side, you've got other other actors
Who
that
can
are
come back to
yeah,
voices?
they're synonymous. I would probably I would be willing to bet that, of course, with the exception of, Twee, but everybody else would come back. Everybody else would be like,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure, sign me up. Like, and I don't even have to be like, you could do something, you can make something really, really magical, like with that, because people do the same thing when Peter Cullen comes back to voice Optimus Prime. They're like, man, he's been doing that for years, and
Yeah.
so can you imagine like them all getting together, but just in a studio? It'd be dope.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, animation, that'd be a great idea.
Yeah.
I'd watch it.
Uh, oh, absolutely. And I mean that is a good point that you brought up as well. It would be cool to see with the animation. It would be like, hey, this is a Power Rangers animated series. Don't expect everything to be a one-to-one recreation. We're gonna start off with Mighty Morphin, and then we're just gonna go from there. We might do some of the same story arcs, have them play out a little bit differently, things like that. So that would be a cool aspect. And
Well,
I don't think fans would be against it, because some fans are against when it comes to adapting something. Some fans are against changing it. So if you're gonna do you know a Green with Evil saga, or if you're gonna do an adaptation of something in a different medium, generally depending on what it is, they don't like changing something up. Like, oh, we're gonna make Trini the Black Ranger instead of the Yellow Ranger or something like that. Then it'll be like, nah, we don't like that. So I
well,
think
and
in the
that's
animated, go
go ahead.
on, we can
Sorry.
play chicken. Go ahead.
Oh, no, no, no. I was just saying, like, that even then you would have to slowly build on that. Like, obviously, you're not. I wouldn't come out of the woodwork, you know, or from the jump trying to do something like drastic. Like for example, what you were saying, like making like Trini the Black Ranger or something like that. I wouldn't do that from the jump. I would give people like the satisfaction of like, okay, look, this first season we are getting the entire, or like the core cast back. We're gonna do it in an animated style, but this is going to be a modern time. Basically, you could do like whatever they're doing in the comic, just doing it, now. Um, but the biggest difference is once you've hooked them, now you have a new mythology, or a new interpretation that you can like go upon, because then you can even look at past Rangers, which is something that they were doing, where Jason and like the original crew, they met like Zordon's teenagers from like the 70s or the 60s, where like it was a
Yeah.
female Red Ranger and stuff like that. So like it opens up the, that whole like web of, the multiverse, where people can, say, oh, well, yeah, I grew up on that, but at the same time, I'm digging this new kind of thing that's going on. So I'm gonna see where this goes. So,
Yeah.
because I mean, like that's what the comics are doing. Like the comics created a new character, and can nobody tell me that that character isn't doing awesome, not just because it's basically Tommy, but it's a whole new character, and he's got a new costume and new Zords and new powers, and like he's a parallel universe. Like it's a brilliant idea. So you know and then again, for it to be animated, I mean, that'd be not a very costly project that they could probably profit from like really, really well.
Yeah,
But
I definitely would like to see animation. Um so the with that being said, the question that I have that I raised to the forum as we move on, because we spent an hour talking about the Power Ranger stuff, which isn't a problem, But the question that I have, when it comes to adaptation, movie, TV show, whatever, if it's based on a book, a comic, a graphic novel, some, a TV show, would you prefer, which one do you prefer? A one-to-one adaptation, or letting the showrunners do their own thing, or letting the whatever thing it is, whether it's a TV show, a movie, whatever like that, do its own thing. The creators do their own thing. So, do you prefer a one-to-one adaptation, or the creators doing their own thing? And there's some room with the creators doing their own thing, so I'll cover it here. If you if you are on the side of letting the creators do their own thing, how close do you want them to stay to it?
Okay, so I think I'll go first. I
yeah, I was
am
gonna let
somewhere
say.
I am somewhere in the middle because like you're changing mediums, so you have to change it to fit that medium.
Mm-hmm.
So like let's take Winter Soldier for an instance, which is a great adaptation, but you cannot adapt what happened in the comics because in the movie spectrum, you didn't adapt all that history that came before it. So, you didn't have like the Red Skull embedding his shards of his memory into people, into his personality takeover. So you didn't have that. You didn't have the replacement Captain Americas that kind of showed up, the Captain Bucky's who showed up after Steve and Buck. So you couldn't
Mm-hmm.
do that. But if you look at Wanted, you completely changed the story from the comic. Now, granted, you couldn't do everything that was possible in Wanted, that because the medium but you just can't have a dude made up of all, was it like 600 or 200 of the world's most evil people in history? Shit, you can't have that.
Right.
So, but then again, don't adapt it if you're just like, okay, we're just gonna some of the characters and so on and so forth. But when you're changed, like, okay, we like beats of this story, we're gonna do it. We're gonna try to keep it as faithful as possible, but we can't adapt everything in it, so we're just gonna have to bring in our own shit to play off what's already established. If you can do that, like if you can find that middle ground and still make it good, then like make it like give nods to the people who know the origin stuff. So like with once again the 2017 Power Rangers movie, there was no nuggets in there for people who've been watching Power Rangers for this entire time, except for one. Like you're adapting it, but you're not rewarding people for being longtime fans, and you kind of, hey, this is your audience, so you have to kind of appease your core audience while bringing more people into it, and that's kind of why I will say I gotta fall someplace in the middle. So like do a Winter Soldier and not a Wanted. It's what I would be saying.
So does that go with all mediums as well, with not only movies but TV shows too?
TV shows. Oh, no, okay, that would be for movies. For TV shows, there's no excuse. I mean, granted, you can't like you can tell an original story by adapting something like let's look at the CW shows. You can tell original stories like, okay, this is Green Arrow, this is the Flash, but we're gonna try to set in our own universe. But then when you bring it in like characters who exist in that world, and then you change something about them, and it's just like, hey, this is Iris and Barry's daughter. We're gonna call her Excess. Like, no, that's their granddaughter. Um, why don't you bring in a tornado twins? Stuff like that. Like, there's no excuse when you have access to basically as many as the characters as you want, but then you still cop out, but like, we're going to do something original with it. Now, animation, there's also no fucking excuse for animation, unless, once again, you're telling an original story based on the characters. So it depends on what you do for television.
Okay. So because the way that what made me come up with this question, and I
Mhm.
put it in the keep, but the reason why I came up with this question is because it seems that what everything that you've heard about the boys you hate.
Oh,
And
yes.
it seems like you wanted a one-to-one adaptation
No, no,
for the
no.
TV show.
I did not want a one-to-one. I just didn't want them changing character motivation because with the boys, the character motivation is the key. So Butcher's wife was killed. No, no, she was raped. There was a superhero baby that he had to beat to death, and it killed his wife. It wasn't she cheated on him with somebody, and now she's living in seclusion with the kid. It was the murder of his wife that made him who he is. So when you change the motivation, like Huey was a fish out of water, so it was dipping his toe in the water, but they just had him just jump right in. So he's like the conflicting of, hey, I was just here, and you're basically treating me like I've already agreed to join the team instead of, oh, he joined the team. They had a president who was anti-superhero, which is why the boys were, you know, a government official agency instead of, I don't know what happened in the series because I had to give up, but I don't think they were officially sanctioned by the government. So there's some motivations that have changed, in which, once again, if I did not know about the show, the comic book, I probably would have enjoyed. But I don't like character motivations changing. This is why I hated season 2 of The Walking Dead. You can do what you want, but the character's motivation should always stay the same. And that's the one thing that I think should always be adapted is the character's motivation.
I don't know your explanation of the boys. I never got. I think Butcher's motivation is pretty much the same. I never thought that it was she cheated on him with Homelander. I thought that it was pretty. It was spelled out pretty clearly that he raped her, and Butcher thought she was dead, but then turns out that they kept her alive because she was pregnant with the kid. Um, so I would disagree on that point because at least to me that's how I took it. It wasn't like oh she cheated blah 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 and that's what makes him who he is.
Mhm.
With the I don't know I didn't I guess I would have to go back and rewatch season 2. I didn't think that Huey just jumped right in super quickly. To me, it seemed like he was really, really on the fence and really in over his head, even after he kills what is that dude's name?
I'm gonna
Translucent.
call I'm gonna call him Blarney Cock because that's who he killed in the comic. Like,
Okay.
no, but it what was it? It was
Translucent.
like what, 3 episodes? Oh no, it felt like 2 episodes where I don't know how far I got in the series, but it felt like he was like, yeah, I'm ready to do this. I'm going to go undercover and blah blah blah. Like he jumped into it too quickly for me. They
Hmm.
didn't like so by changing Huey to an American, I think also takes away from the character. So it's him seeing everything for the first time that kind of like it's a stall. So he's like, yeah, I'll go along and see how things go. This isn't my world, where it just seems like he's like, yeah, I'm in for this. Like, I don't know. But I did not want a one-to-one. I just wanted character motivations. Like Huey was the reluctant member, and that still plays a part in his character. Starlight, or what they just call her Annie, like they rushed her development where it takes place. Like, you know, she starts doing things. She joins that world, and she starts doing things that she's not that doesn't fit well with her. Then she meets Huey, the one person since she joined the Seven who was nice to her and that developed. And you see her growing as a person with all this stuff. Like, oh, she's overly religious, raised in a Bible Belt, part of a superhero group that was all like God this, God that. And she goes back and they're not who she thought they were. And she was like, wait, if these people around me, if everything that I believed in isn't what I thought it was, does that mean that my God is abandoning me, or did my God never exist? And that's one of I think that plays out, I think, like the first 3 volumes of the comic instead of just like a couple of episodes. Like that, her turning was entirely too quick for me. And I'm like, I get it. You have to put that into your first season, but you also did not have to bring everything into that first season, which is what it felt like they did. But that's just.
I would say the way that you're explaining it, the reason that I would get it is because it's only 8 seasons. Following that, I would say go back and watch the first season because it's only 8 seasons. It's 8 seasons, 8 episodes. I mean, holy shit, 8 seasons. It's only 8 episodes. So I think that's why the pacing was changed, because it's only 8 episodes. And I think that as you can clearly see, one of the cons is that depending on what you're trying to do, you might have to pace it quicker than normal. But secondly, I think that's a good thing, is because as we know from the Netflix shows, 10 episodes of a streaming show, especially if it's down there an hour, 10 episodes is a lot, and shit tends, you got to keep your writing tight, and shit tends to fall off after a number of episodes. So I think that's probably where the 8 to 10, well, no, the Marvel shows are 12 episodes, weren't they?
Yeah, 12 to like 13.
Yeah. So I think 8 to 10, enough time to maybe properly base something if you want to bring stuff in from the comics. It's where it's 13. Anything after that is where it starts getting a little long and people start getting bored and things like that. So I think that's why the pacing is much different than what you know from the books, because it's only 8 episodes. But to that, I also say, just even if you fucking hate it, I would say still go back and watch it because it's only 8 episodes. I wouldn't tell you that if it was like 15 episodes.
Oh yeah, no.
I wouldn't ask anybody to, if somebody doesn't like a show, like if somebody came up to me and we started talking about the Blacklist or something like that, and I said I couldn't really get into it, and somebody said, no, you should give it another shot, it's 22 episodes, I would say to them, are you fucking kidding me? I didn't like the show and you expect me to sit through 22 episodes? That's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
But if they come back and say, oh, you should give it another chance, it's like 9, 10 episodes, I'll be like, okay, that's not a whole lot. Like, when you think about it, the show is 45 minutes, so we'll just round it up to an hour. Okay, 9 hours isn't a whole lot versus 22 almost a full fucking day. You get what I'm saying? So I wouldn't tell you, knowing that you didn't like what you watched, I wouldn't tell you to go back and watch the first episode, watch the first season, unless I knew it was a truncated season. I'm not telling anybody to go back to give anything that they didn't like a second chance anything over 10 episodes
Okay,
because you can
just
accidentally binge watch 10 episodes in a day.
mhm. Okay, but just to
I,
say that it's 8 episodes, the first story arc in the comic is 6 issues, which is
yeah,
so that it's
yeah,
on par. But like one of the things that I always say with when they're adapting stuff like that is you can literally do an issue an episode. It plays out roughly the same. I don't
yeah,
know.
I can see that. But yeah, that's damn. All right. Sorry, I got the game on in the background. These motherfuckers were slapping each other in the helmets. Um, but yeah, I would say go back and at least try to watch the 8 episodes just to see how it plays out and if it what they've changed and what they're doing with the arcs that they're creating. Because I haven't read any of the books yet. I do plan on going back to it, but my take on the well, John, what's your take? One-on-one adaptation or freedom to do whatever? And if so, how
It's
much freedom?
to me it's a little of both. Kind of like what Bruce was saying. I do agree. You know, when something is there's always just a fine line. You know, he brought up Captain America: The Winter Soldier, which it wasn't a direct adaptation. Adaptation. Another example is, the last Logan movie. You know, it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't Old Man Logan. You know, you didn't have Blind Hawkeye. You didn't have, inbred Hulks. You know, you didn't have any of that. You know, so I think I mean, you want to be able to make something your own, and that's a tough time because I do enjoy the Boys uh, series on Amazon. I enjoy it very, very much. I read through like one or two of the first, couple of issues. Um, so I'm not like deep, deep into it. I know that there's a lot of differences. Um, which to me it's kind of like one of those things like if they did it verbatim it'd be cool. I don't think I'd have an issue with it. I think I'd like it, regardless, because the tone is so different from anything else that's on TV. um
Yeah.
but at the same time you don't want to do something like another example that I'll use that is like on the negative side of a direct one-on-one adaptation is these recent like live action Disney movies. Like
Yeah.
they're legitimate direct adaptations, like verbatim almost. So like,
Basically, just live action recreations.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things where like I think that's another thing that's also the blessing and the curse is like yo the original thing was just so good that if you're always going to get the comparisons with the new version. So it's like you might as well go for something a little bit different or try and go different. Not like 100%, but like, get it enough to where it's like, okay, I can see where that's the new version of this character or the new version of that character, but not so much where you're doing a completely like where you're changing it just so it can be different than the other one. There has to be some kind of reasoning to your change. So, I mean, like, this is coming from someone who's not knowledgeable on the boys on comics, but like to me, the TV show is great. Like I like it a lot. Like I don't think there's a lot of things wrong with it. I think everything kind of like works very well. But maybe going back and reading the books, I may have a different opinion. But as for right now, I like it. So it's just a fine line with me. Like yes, I want there to be things that are there that I enjoy about the old version, but at the same time I am looking for something invigorating and like fresh and something that I haven't seen before, which goes back to our discussion a few minutes ago about just having it in animation because it's like you can do things in animation that you weren't able to see almost 30 years ago. And just like a little example of it is like there's a scene and I always go back to the Boom comics, like I said, I'm sorry, but there's a scene where like the Dragon Zord, like Billy's Triceratops Zord, like in the show, the horns came out with like chains, and he would wrap them around like the villain in the old Sentai shows, and he would be like pulling against him. Well,
Yeah.
in the comic, there's a scene where like the Triceratops horns, they like fly out, but the Dragon Zord grabs them, and the Dragon Zord's like almost riding the Triceratops Zord like a chariot, and I'm like, yo, that's cool. Like you never
Yeah.
thought you'd see that, but you weren't gonna be able to see that in the old show. But you can do that in comics, and if you can do it in comics, you damn well sure can do it in animation and make it look cool. So I
Yeah.
mean, like I said, it's just a 50-50 for me. Like I do want to see a new fresh take on stuff, but kind of like the characters' motivations, like what Bruce was saying. There has to be something that like, oh man, that familiarizes me with the original that I caught. But if to me, I can certainly say I wouldn't like a one-on-one because at using the Disney movies as an example, after every Disney movie, live action one or CGI one that I saw, when people are like, well, how'd you like it? And it's like, it was just like the cartoon, but it was just with real life. Like it wasn't no, like it wasn't better. Like
It was devoid of the personality. Like from when I saw The Lion King, and I'm like, something's missing. Just
yeah,
something's
yeah.
missing. But
But,
with the boys,
but
I had that same feeling of something's missing. So if I
mhm.
watch something and I go, something's missing, instead of it's like, okay, I'm like, was once like we say, Winter Soldier is like my favorite comic book story arc of all time. But when I watched the movie, I wasn't thinking something's missing, and I'm just like, oh, yeah, this is a great movie. I like the beats are completely different, but I'm like, this is a great movie. So if I go into it and it's like, okay, something like Planet Hulk, the animated one, I don't know what it was about that, but something was missing. So you you're not limited, but it's because animation, but something was missing. So if I get the feeling that something's missing, then that's kind of why I toward to lean into the in between. If I feel like something's missing, then I lose enjoyment.
I mean, it's always going to be a gamble. Like I said, nobody goes out to say like, "Hey, let's make a failure." Like everyone's always going to try and do their best to make something successful, especially when you have a franchise that already has a really devoted fan base. I mean, it's almost like another example is like the Ninja Turtles. Like when are we going to get a good Ninja Turtles movie? Like the technology here, like y'all are making good Marvel movies. Y'all can bring the Hulk to life. Y'all can bring, Iron Man suit to life, but you know, y'all can't do some CGI turtles that, are just all we need them to do is just look like the comic book, man. We don't need this extra puka shell necklace and wearing jeans and, tats and like, nah, man, like sometimes less is more, like that's the thing is like, that was one of the greatest things about the Power Rangers is like even just visually, like from a costume standpoint, it was just like red jumpsuit with like diamonds on it. Like it was simple. You didn't have to go overboard with it. There wasn't anything extra,
Yeah,
to it. And
Yeah.
sometimes less is more. You ain't got to give us all the the bells and whistles like that, because now you're just putting extra weight on something. Like same thing for like Optimus Prime and the flames on the truck. Is like, man, I don't need that. But then Bumblebee comes out and they make Optimus in his classic form, and they're like, yo, where was this like fucking 10 years ago? Like where was this? Like if you'd have put this in the movie, guarantee you would have had a much more widely accepted movie. But no, you just did something because you wanted to change it for change's sake. Like you didn't give any motive, like what Bruce was saying. There's no motivation to what, like, why is he wearing pants if he ain't got nothing to keep, to hide? Like he's a turtle, bro.
Yeah.
Like he ain't, he doesn't have what we have, So why,
yeah,
like I don't know. That just like it's things like that kind of just uh, that's it's always a one shot. You either you win it or you lose it, and I don't know. I think Power Rangers recently has taken more L's than W's, and it's just like it'd be nice to have something new and fresh, but still very reminiscent of the classic show that everyone grew up on. So yeah,
Yeah.
50-50 for me.
Um I was hoping when you asked, I was gonna ask, but I guess I'll just go ahead.
I mean, I figured we don't have to. I mean, we
Yeah, I
just
know.
want to answer.
I just wanted to see if one of y'all were gonna do it. Um, so the before I get into my reasoning, this is really interesting to hear from my end because I remember a time where, in certain moments, Bruce was a one-to-one person
Yes, I was. I've
because
evolved and matured.
I remember him hating the fact that they made Jarvis an AI in Iron Man. It was
Yes,
like they don't
yes.
have a fucking butler, and I'm like, but that's one less person you gotta fucking worry about dying in the
Well,
movies.
well,
It,
and
it
before
makes
before
sense.
you can, yeah, before you continue, I was the exact, I was the exact same way. And there's times where I catch myself where I'm still thinking that. So it's very warranted. So I'm with you on that, Bruce.
That shit was funny. So this is interesting to hear, and this is basically another reason why I presented the question, not solely because of the boys, but
Mhm.
because having seen moments of, oh, this needs to be a one to one, and I'm like, no, it doesn't. But
Nah.
where I'm at is that I allow creators. I'm for giving creators freedom depending on what they're doing. If they're going to be so, if you're doing a TV show based on the New Mutants or X Force
Mhm.
or the West Coast Avengers or something like that, whether it's animated, live action, whether it's a movie, it doesn't matter what it is. If you're doing that and you want to tell an original story, then you can do that. It doesn't have to be necessarily based on any any comic property. Um, Now, talking specific genre or specific mediums, TV shows, you can do an original TV show based on a book, graphic novel, a comic, fucking radio show. It doesn't matter. You can do something original with that. For me, even if you start bringing in characters or story arcs from the comics, I'm fine with doing original stuff with it if it makes sense. So if you bring in um so let's use the CW verse for an example
Mhm.
with Arrow and The Flash. So when I started watching Arrow, when I went back and I watched Arrow, I realized that this was a Batman show. They basically, that's one of the things that Arrow's character had to basically fight uphill against, being compared to Batman. And he's basically Batman.
Yeah.
He's an outspoken, left-leaning, like super liberal version of Batman, right? He he doesn't he he literally says what he wants, what's on his mind, and that's really one of the differences between the two characters. What the Arrow show did was that they leaned into, oh, the Batman comparisons, so much so that they actually started bringing in characters associated with Batman
Yeah.
into the Arrow. So me not being well versed on DC, but still knowing, shallow details about properties. If I'm watching the Green Arrow show and you start talking about Ra's al Ghul, I'm gonna look at you like you're stupid.
Or like when it was like, hey, they're bringing anarchy into Arrow, and I was like, isn't that a Batman villain?
Man, this is cheeks.
So and it is, and that was one of my issues was that if you're creating, even if you do a loose adaptation, right? So if you're
Mhm.
saying, oh, we're gonna, do his origin, he's gonna get shipwrecked. We're not gonna do it the exact same way though, but he is gonna get shipwrecked, and this is basically us starting from this point, but kind of making it our own thing. I'm fine with that. But again, if you're pulling in stuff from the source material, you can create original content from pulling source material if it makes sense. Don't start bringing in, if you're gonna do all this stuff with Arrow, don't start pulling in from the wrong source material. Don't start
Yeah.
Mhm.
pulling in from Batman source material when you should be using Green Arrow source material.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense because
Yeah.
I know these characters are associated with something else, with another character. So I'm gonna look at this weird.
Yeah.
Don't make, and even with some of the original stuff that they did, like the whole Felicity thing, like when they made them a couple, it was annoying because the relationship didn't seem natural. It seemed forced. When you have a Black Canary that he's always interacting with, and he dated both versions, the
But
sisters.
yeah, definitely seemed forced, but I think that was also mostly due to, well, not mostly, but it could have been due to crowd reaction because you had all these people that were like, "Oh man,
What
Felicity's
was it?
banging," or
What they
"Felicity's."
call them? Alicity was
Yeah,
whatever
like
that.
the
Yeah,
shippers, like, so that's not even core fans. Like if you have a core fan like yourself, like you're saying, you know, you see Ra's al Ghul and you're like, man, this is cheeks. Why are they bringing in a Batman villain? But then like to the teen girl who, like, that show is also marketed to, she ain't worried about Ra's al Ghul. Like she's like, yo,
right.
I want to see the love story. I want to see these two hook up, and then that, and
And
then when they break up,
and
I want to see these two people hook up.
and even then, that's fine, but don't force it because that was an original thing. I would have
Yeah,
been fine with that had they written it better. Don't force the relationship between Oliver and his his HQ, his quarterback, basically. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying?
No, I hear you. I'm right
Don't
there with you.
force don't force that relationship when you have a ready relationship with
Yeah,
Dinah.
yeah,
Don't, and it doesn't even matter that this is from the comics. They always had them interacting. They already had them dating at one point in the backstory. You
yeah,
can easily, they already had chemistry with each other. Lean into that. Don't force this original thing just to do it because people like the couple together, because it
yeah.
doesn't fucking work. The
My
same
whole.
thing with, oh, go on.
Oh, no, no. Go ahead. No. Go ahead.
No, because I'm gonna go on like a super long, like, not rant, but I'm gonna
Well, I
go
mean,
on some
mine's
super
kind of,
long stuff.
it's in the same boat as what you're saying. Like like instead of the relationships, like I'm not big on like these team scenarios that like everybody's doing right now. Like the solo superhero show is like non-existent at this point. Like it's all matters of like teams.
Yeah.
And
Mm,
like to me, like if it's gonna be like to me a team is like the Power Rangers. They are a team of superheroes, or like the Ninja Turtles, like where no one. I mean, you're always gonna have your favorite, of course, but nobody is bigger than the other. But like that was what kind of like started drawing me off to the CW verse, is because you started having like, hey, yeah, once in a while you get Flash and Green Arrow together, but then like you also have their respective worlds like having to meet up, and you're like, I'm not even worried about these people. Why are y'all trying to force these people? Like the same way that you were saying, why are they trying to force Felicity and Oliver when you got Dinah right there? And it's like, why aren't y'all working on that? Like,
right.
you know like that was, and then like it just ended up losing me. But no, that I'm in the same boat. Like when you started relying on other people, it's almost like, well, what is this? Is this a like is this a DC comic show? Just, if that's the case, just call it that. Call it the DC universe. That way you can bring in, you know, Ray Palmer, and you can bring in, And I mean, I get it though. It's the new thing. Like people are all about that whole like crossovers and worlds happening. Like
Yeah,
there's never been more of it now on mainstream media. Like everybody's always about that. But to me, like while I do enjoy that, when comics did it, and I mean they still do it, but when comics do it, they do it very seldomly because they know
yeah,
that the characters solo by themselves, they're still just as powerful. Like, just not to go off topic, but when it comes to Spider-Man, like Spider-Man to me is as strong of a character where he can have his own universe. He didn't need to be brought in. I mean, it was fun seeing him, but he didn't need to be brought in as like Tony Stark's sidekick or protege or all this other stuff. Like,
yeah.
I know that's for another podcast, another session, but like I guess that's what I'm saying. The Spider-Man's universe is so huge, you know, you don't need to rely on other people and other kind of things to go on to make it entertaining. Like Daredevil on Netflix did that so well. Like it was just the Daredevil characters in season 1. Like you had like he was the main character, and of course you had Foggy. Like where those are the assisting characters, but they didn't work as a team. It was all about Matt. So
Right.
yeah.
And
No, anybody else got anything to say?
oh,
Go ahead.
Sorry, I know he's
yeah.
gonna go off.
Let me get this in before you go on your tangent. Like, okay, so with the original ideas, I want to compare two shows. So Smallville and Gotham.
Okay.
Smallville and Gotham both kind of tackle a area, a point in these characters that's not really tackled a lot. So Clark from growing up to becoming Superman, and then Bruce like immediately after his parents' death, and then Jim Gordon starting off with the Gotham Police Force. Now Smallville did a little bit better because they had
Bruce,
restrictions.
speak up a little bit more because there's background noise that's kind of covering
Sorry.
your audio.
Okay, so Smallville, it was Clark from like building up to become a Superman, and Gotham was Bruce post his parents' death till
Yeah.
like immediately after his parents' death, and then Jim joining the Gotham City Police, like Detective Gordon, like just now starting off. What now? Smallville had more limitations on what Clark can do, so it was, hey, let's establish, the meteor before it was kryptonite a little bit more. What happens if people come in contact with it? Like, so they're taking liberties because it's an era that's not really delved in. And then Gotham
Hmm.
becomes, hey, let's start bringing in Batman villains.
Yeah.
So it's like what? You're not going to just no, we're going to have like the Joker and everything. It was like, but it's knowledge that these characters didn't start existing until Batman showed up.
Right.
No, we got Victor Zsasz in here. We got Penguin. We got Edward Nygma. But what? Yeah, he's really into riddles. No, we don't need those type of overt fucking Easter eggs where anybody can pick it up. Or it's just like, hey, here's this guy. Like one of my favorite episodes of Smallville is when the Legion of Superheroes show up because that is canon. Like Superman inspires the Legion, and then the Legion go back in time and inspires Clark to become Superman. So
Hmm.
that's a nod to the comics that if you're aware of that, it's cool. But just seeing that interact, but it's not the entire show. So
Right.
like hey, you got a blank slate to do what you want with with Clark Kent, not as Superman, but with Clark Kent. Now they kind of take it, they go too far in later seasons, but I think Gotham is just like instant. The Penguin's here, and I'm like, okay, you know what, I'm done. So that's some type of stuff like wiggle room that I can see, like I'm all for, and the negative aspect of it. So I just want to get that out before Courtney goes on his rant.
Yeah. So, and it's not even. I wouldn't even categorize it as a rant, but basically, I'm for original stuff, depending on if it makes sense with what you're pulling from and what you're using it for. So again, TV shows, I think you have a little bit more wiggle room to do something original with a story arc because if it's my thing with one-to-one adaptations is that if I'm adapting a TV show into a movie or if I'm adapting a movie into a comic or something like that, I don't want a one-to-one adaptation because then I know what's coming.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm gonna adapt the Winter Soldier, and I'm not going to, well, no, Winter Soldier isn't a good example. If I adapt, um, what has like a good, not necessarily a twist, but Iron Man, let's use Iron Man 3.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm gonna adapt Iron Man 3, or if I'm gonna adapt the Iron Man story arc and use it for Iron Man 3, I'm not going to do something like, oh, we're gonna make like it like, oh, we're gonna keep Maya Hansen as the primary villain of the movie because she was the primary villain of the extremist arc that Iron Man 3 is based on.
Yes.
I'm not gonna do that because you're gonna see it coming. Now, if we have her start out as good, it might be like, all right, she's bad in the comics, so there's a potential for this to be a heel turn. That's different because then I kind of I don't know if you're going to actually follow through and make her evil down the line. But the fact that because I'm pretty sure from it's been a while since I read Extremist, but I'm pretty sure in the comics she was like there was no secret. I think it was like straight up her doing experiments for like a government contract. I don't think it was like, oh, I'm doing this for science and no, I'm turning evil. I'm pretty sure it was like, nah, this can be weaponized. We need to weaponize this. I'm pretty sure that's how it was in the comics. I could be wrong. I, I'm open to being
I think you're
wrong.
right.
So,
Yeah, I haven't read that
but
in a while, but I think she was working with someone else who
uh huh.
was doing it for like a contract, and then she was like, ah ha ha, it's me who was doing this for evil.
It was
That's what I
Aldrich,
Yeah.
right?
remembered. I
I
think
think it
What
was
so.
did you
Aldrich.
say, John?
I think it was Aldrich Killian.
Yeah, she was working with Killian in the comic.
Yeah,
But he killed himself early on in the comic. I remember
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Um, But like the swap that they did for the movie, like Maya kind of started out as a scientist that was, on a breakthrough of this life changing technology, and then it turns out that she's like working for the evil guy. But it's
yeah,
like, hey, sometimes you got to do what you got to do in order to get your work out there, get your work seen. And then there's
yeah,
Aldrich Killian, who's the bad guy. We knew Aldrich Killian was the bad guy going into the film when
Yeah.
he died early on in the comics. You know what I'm saying? So that's freedom that I'm open to. Now, the freedom that I was referring to with Arrow is like, look, it's fine if you're doing like a TV show, even if you're doing a movie, but don't if you're gonna use if you're gonna bring in like they adapt with the stuff with Speedy and turning him into Arsenal. And you're going to adapt the whole, oh, we discover Oliver discovers Speedy doing drugs or whatever like that, and he basically sets him straight. That's fine. Obviously, you're not gonna do a one-to-one adaptation on a TV show of somebody doing heroin. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? That's just not gonna be a thing. So if he's doing some other in the TV show, they used like some type of performance enhancing drug that he got addicted to. I'm fine with that because it still shares the same elements with the story arc that they pulled from, but they just flipped it on it. They changed it to where it was original enough to where they weren't gonna have, and they saw the problems with the original content, and it was like, okay, we still want to use this, but we need to change it. So instead of a hard drug, let it be some type of performance enhancing steroid or something like that he gets addicted to, and it changes his personality and it makes him like rage out or whatever like that. Okay, I'm cool with that. Where you start fucking up is where, oh, we're going to even if it's straight original. Where they started fucking up was, oh well, Ra's al Ghul is here and he's approaching Oliver because he wants him to run the League of Shadows. I'm sorry, this is not Bruce Wayne, sir. This is not Batman. You're leaning too far into the comparisons between the two, and you're just making this a straight up Batman show. Ra's al Ghul is not approaching Oliver Queen to become the new leader of the League of Assassins.
He
You know
never
what I'm saying?
did. Yeah,
And
he
he
never did.
never did. That's the thing. And it's like and my issue with that, and even then, that would be doing something new, doing something original, right? But my
Mhm.
issue with that is that it doesn't make sense for the story that you're trying to do. You just randomly brought in Ra's al Ghul and the League of Shadows when you literally were working a story arc with Deathstroke. What was the issue with Deathstroke? And Deathstroke isn't even a Green Arrow villain.
Teen Titans.
So, but what they did with him was I think was good. They brought them in. They had them like meet up. They had them at odds, and then they kind of take on their personas, and they're still at odds with each other. That's fine. Okay, there are no Teen Titans in this universe. That
Mhm.
makes sense. That completely makes sense. Hey, we don't have any Teen Titans, but we want to give Oliver like a formidable adversary to go up against. Let's just use Deathstroke. All right, cool. But bringing in all this other shit, oh no! At some point, we need to bring in Talia. Um, no, they didn't bring in Talia. Well, I think they
Nissa.
did it for
They
the
brought in
episode.
Miss
Yeah,
Nissa.
Nissa. Yeah, it was like we're gonna bring in Nissa Al Ghul and Raz, and it's like why? I don't want to hear any Al Ghul that's not related to fucking Bruce Wayne. They don't need to be in the show. The same thing with the Flash. Now, the issues with the Flash, again, if you're gonna do something original, or if you're gonna pull from a story, make it make sense. Don't. I like the twist that they did with uh who was the which speedster was it that they had Tony Todd face? Was that Zoom?
I think so. So they had
It
Reverse
was.
Flash and Zoom, right? Yeah. So yeah, I think it was Zoom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they had Reverse Flash and they had Zoom. So the twist that they did with Zoom, which was a play on the comic books, they had they had the guy who was playing Jay Garrick from like Earth. I don't
Two.
think it was Earth 2. I think it was a different Earth. They
No,
had an
it was
alternate
Earth
version.
2 because they had
Okay.
Barry go to Earth 2 and fucking get that Barry. Okay, you know what? No, it was just Earth 2. Sorry.
Um the reason why I was having trouble with it because I know they brought in John Wesley Shipp's Flash, and I know he's Jay Garrick actually,
Yeah.
but I can't remember what Earth he's from. But the twist that I liked that they did was that they introduced Earth to Jay Garrick, and throughout the season you had the whole what's the identity of Zoom? Who's Zoom?
Hunter's Island.
And you
Oh,
know
okay.
what?
That wasn't. Oh, I'm sorry. That wasn't a question for me. Never mind.
I'm so lost. What did you?
You
He
said
thought it was
who's
a
Zoom,
literal.
and I was
He
like
thought it was
Hunter
a
Solomon,
literal question
and
for
I
him.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But that's the thing. That's the thing that I like that they did. So the actor who portrayed Jay Garrick, who we were introduced as Jay Garrick,
Mhm.
the way that they did it was that people called people called it that it was like no, it's Jay Garrick. They're gonna make this version of Jay Garrick Zoom. So what
Mhm.
it turns out is that the actor that we were introduced to was actually like an alternate. It was weird because again, time travel was confusing as hell, and anytime you try to explain it or think about it, it just makes me want to fucking kill myself. But the actor, Jay Garrick's actor, was actually Hunter Zolomon.
Mm-hmm.
And Nat J. Garrick that we were introduced to was like an alternate version of Hunter or something like that. But it turns out that guy was Hunter Zolomon posing as Jay Garrick, who was Zoom. And I was like, okay, this is just like the comics. Hunter Zolomon is Zoom. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? So this is just them like kind of doing like a backdoor nod to the comics, but just going about it a different way. And then we got like Wesley Shipp's Flash, who was actually Jay Garrick. So I like that. You know what I'm saying? But then when you start doing random shit like, oh, we're gonna give Iris powers. Why? What's the point? Why? You know what I'm saying? So it
Yeah.
becomes and just like John was saying with the whole team thing, the fact that the shows are they give the characters teams to work with, like a Team Arrow or a Team Flash, it takes away because just like the Flash started doing, they started giving everybody powers.
Yeah.
They gave Cisco his powers from the comic books. They turned him into Vibe, which it's from the comics. But I don't think that they necessarily needed to give everybody else powers.
No.
I'm fine with Vibe, with Cisco working at Star Labs. I'm fine with Caitlin Snow working at Star Labs. If you're gonna do Killer Frost and you're gonna give her an origin story, make her a scientist, whatever like that, and then she turns into Killer Frost, I'm cool with it. You don't necessarily have to
Well,
have
it's
them working with Barry
like the
because
same thing
then
as
once
like
everybody what are you saying, John?
I was gonna say. I mean, that could tap on the same thing as like this whole kind of new wave that's like happened since like the late 2000s, where like everybody like there's no such thing as secret identities anymore. Like
Yeah,
that whole secret identity arc, like as a comic arc, as a classic comic arc, it's no longer relevant anymore in this day and age for some reason.
yeah,
Like I don't like honestly that should be a future topic that we go through. Continue. Sorry.
yeah. No, no, we can definitely talk about that at another time. Um, but yeah, I don't think that they necessarily need. Yeah, they could have been working at Star Labs. I don't know. I don't know if Killer Frost like started out as a scientist at Star Labs. I'm not sure. But at the same time, even if you do that for the show, I don't think they necessarily need everybody that works at Star Labs to be working with Barry.
True.
That's just I don't think that that's a thing that needs to happen. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, it's about him trying to maintain control of his life as Flash and as Barry Allen CSI. If you're doing something from the comics or from a book to the movies, I'm fine if you change something, if it makes sense for your story, and if your story makes sense. It made sense for them to adapt Civil War the way that they did. One, because I think, again, I've gone on record saying I don't think Civil War is that great with the setup and everything like that, even though it's like their best selling book ever. But
Mm-hmm.
the way that it played out in the comics wouldn't have made sense to use in the movies. And I'm not just saying that because the movies had their own continuity that they needed to follow. Having having a and I believe in the comics they wrote the characters, they wrote Iron Man and Cap out of character to support the size that they supported. Now, with the whole adaptation to the movie. It worked out much better when they decided to do, yeah, we still have Iron Man and Captain America going against each other over this registration act, but it's not the same registration act. It's, hey, we have the United Nations have come together. If the Avengers want to do anything, they have to be sent to a location by the United Nations. It's the same thing as the Superhero Registration Act. except you don't have to register your identity because there are no identities to register, but you're still working for this government agency. I think that was a much better adaptation than doing a straight up one-to-one adaptation because I mean they couldn't even do that anyway if they wanted to. But something like even if you go to uh hell, Guardians of the Galaxy is the perfect example of doing something original and it working. Because if you go back and read the Abnett and fuck, oh my god, I can't remember the goddamn name of the I can't remember the name of the creators of that run, of that like '08 run of Guardians. Um
The DNA run?
yeah, the DNA run.
Uh-huh.
If you go back and read that run, it ain't shit like the movies.
No, not at all.
If you go back and read any comics with the Guardians in them, Star Lord isn't that way. Drax isn't that way. Rocket is the same. Groot is the same. Although at one point Groot was able to talk normally. Um, I think Gamora was the same as well. But if you just look at the Guardians of the Galaxy setup, they made James Gunn made Star Lord lovable oath. He's a charming goof. When in the comics at the time, because they've now they since changed Star Lord in the comics to match up with Chris Pratt's portrayal.
Of
But
course.
if you go back and read the comics, Star Lord was basically like an intergalactic Captain America as far as personality goes. So you have this change because that's what James Gunn wanted to do, and it made sense for the story that he was trying to create. And we didn't really have a problem with it because, or I didn't really have a problem with it because of the acting that was involved. But even then, you kept a lot of characters the same. Rocket was still a sarcastic asshole. Gamora was still like a super dangerous person to just be around in general. Groot was still a sentient tree. Hell, even look at the changes that he made for Nebula. In the comics, Nebula is Thanos' granddaughter, not his adoptive daughter.
True.
But it works for the story that he created. Making them sisters and making them basically kidnapped, orphaned children of Thanos gave that story so much more heart because what's at the heart of every story regarding siblings? Some type of rivalry, some type of if if you can do this, I can do it better, or fighting over the love of the, or in this case, the apparent love of one of the parents. But it worked so well because of how he put everything together. So Guardians is the perfect example to use of pulling stuff from the comics and making it your own. He literally just took the team of characters and was like, we got runs that we can use, but I ain't gonna do that. Even the sequel, making Ego Star Lord's dad, that's not a comic. Star Lord's dad is a literal alien who looks like a human.
Yep.
Like Peter's middle name is Jason. His dad in the comics is named Jason. J apostrophe SON. The same fucking logo that the Ravagers have on their jackets is the logo from Star Lord's helmet in the comics. I don't even know if the Ravagers are a team in the comics or a gang in the comics. I don't know. But he adapted so much stuff and just changed it to fit the story that he was creating. and it made sense for his story and the way that he was using it. Because why else would Star Lord be walking around with this fucking logo on? In the comics, it's the logo of the planet, like it's the family crest seal, which is still relates because the Ravagers were his adopted family because they kidnapped him. So it still translates. You get what I'm saying? So that's why I don't have a problem with that adaptation. It's when you start doing trash shit where it becomes an issue. Don't do don't don't adapt the Cure from the X-Men comics and make it a subplot of the fucking movie. That doesn't make any sense. And you can't even call that a subplot because it wasn't really even focused on that much to be considered a subplot. Because it was like, oh, Rogue wants to take the cure. Okay, she's debating it. All right, they're deriving the cure from this mutant who can nullify powers. Okay, we could use this to kind of nullify some of our most powerful characters, some of the most powerful villains in the film later on in the movie. What? What? But you
It's like,
still trying to, but you trying to do the Dark Phoenix on top of this? What? That doesn't make any sense.
hey, here's our MacGuffin. Remember that we established a MacGuffin. Not many MacGuffins are established. That's what that was.
Yeah. So it was like, so my thing is that if you're gonna even if it comes to TV shows, again, my whole thing is no one to ones because the element of surprise isn't gonna be there if you do a straight up one to one because then I'm gonna know, oh, well, yeah, they're gonna kill this character, or this character is gonna get this power upgrade, or this character is gonna go through this one event because that's how it happens in the books, and they're pretty spot on so far. No, you don't have to do that, but don't make the change. Just like John said, don't make the change for the sake of making change. Make it make sense for the story that you're trying to tell. If I'm trying to tell a story if I'm trying to do a Hulk story or She-Hulk, we were just talking about She-Hulk last episode. If
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to do a She-Hulk story and I need a way for her to to become She-Hulk by getting a blood transfusion from her cousin, I'm not if that's how she gets it in the comic books, I'm not going to be like, oh, she randomly the change that I wouldn't make would be, oh, she randomly gets blasted by gamma radiation and also becomes She-Hulk. Because then it's like, what okay, so is this something this is gonna create a door that I may not have intended to open. Because then the questions are gonna be like, okay, if she one, why is she getting exposed to gamma radiation? And two, if that turned her into She-Hulk, is this something going on in the family genetics that we're not being told about? Or something like no. Let's just be like she gets into a car accident. Bruce is the only next of kin that they can contact. She needs a blood transfusion. He advises against it, but his cousin is gonna fucking die if he doesn't do it. Boom. Right there. You don't even have to do the one to one adaptation of having the fucking car accident. It can be some type of fucking illness that she suffers from. It can be anything else that requires her to get a blood transfusion. But I'm going to keep it based around that blood transfusion because nothing else would make sense to me. So I'm all for being giving freedom to creators to do what they want. It
Mm-hmm.
just has to make sense. I'm
Yeah.
fine with giving them an outline, saying, okay, we're gonna adapt House of M. Nah, I can't use House of M because I haven't read through House of M. We're gonna I want to use a story that I've actually read so I can refer to different points for
Okay.
this point I'm. So we're gonna do Planet Hawk.
Mm-hmm.
So the outline that I'm gonna give you, okay, he has to be sent out into space. Doesn't matter how. Doesn't have to be the Illuminati sending him out to space. He needs to go to space and wind up on Sakaar. He needs to get put into some type of gladiator battlefield, and he needs to come out on top and basically overthrow this particular planet's government. Those are three major things that I need you to do. You can do what you can work around all this other stuff. Just include these three things.
Mm-hmm.
And if you come out with, all right, he ends up um the abomination, or some, you can even use a throwaway character, by beast or somebody like that, trying to destroy a spaceship, and Hulk goes up there because he's the only one that can fight by beast from the team. So they send him up there, and he ends up landing, staying on the spaceship, goes through a wormhole, winds up on Sakaar. They fucking capture him, make him fight in the gladiator fights. He comes out on top, becomes champion. Um, Finds other gladiators in the arena, starts a coup, overthrows the government, and then from there, he's basically the king of Sakaar. I didn't bring up the fact that he had a wife and he had a child in the comics. That may not have been the story I was trying to tell.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't bring up the whole and you can throw in other cameos because Silver Surfer was in the arena on Sakaar. You can use that for fucking Beta Ray Bill. You can use that for Adam Warlock. You can use it for anybody else. But that's if you take an outline of like major points of a story arc and just weave around it. Hey, we're not gonna give him a wife instead. I can't remember the wife's name. I can't remember it. And the reason why I bring that up is because I can't remember if it sounds feminine or if it sounds like it could be unisex. But we're
And I
not
think
gonna
was it
give him.
Kyara or some shit like that.
Okay, I think yeah, that's what I was thinking. I almost said Caecilius, but um Kyra or Kyra or something like that. Like we're not gonna give him a wife. We're gonna make Kyra a young gladiator that is barely getting by in these victories that Hulk takes under his wing. And this is it could be male or female, but let's make it male for the sake of for the sake of this example. We're gonna make that a male character. Basically, his it can be a younger brother or a son. That